Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. We talk about different categories of wellness and seeking balance between them. It all stems from my book, Accidentally Well. And there's overview info on our website, letsbewelltogether.com. This is episode 5. We are back for another week of Let's Be Well Together. And this week I want to jump into the area of economic wellness. Mm-hmm. I was talking to you one time and you were talking about kind of a different relationship with money.
Yeah. And
I'm coming at it from the kind of common sense perspective that economic wellness is really critical. There's, I'm pretty sure I read an article a long time ago and it said that a huge percentage of marriages that break up in the first couple of years, it's because of money.
Right.
People can't get on the same page. It adds stress. There's a whole bunch of reasons why it's really important. And saving is really important. But meanwhile, so for me, it's a little bit different when I hear people say that they don't like to think about finances. Now, I get it because for me, it was physical health. Right. I didn't like to think about exercise.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so let's jump into your story. There was a time where you didn't really want to think too much about finances.
For sure, yeah. I'd say until recently, I probably had a pretty negative relationship with my finances and money in general. And I think it kind of started probably in high school, honestly, when I started realizing like the differences of what money I had compared to maybe friends. And even more specifically, I'd say it got worse in university because my parents helped as much as they could in my first year. But then after that, I was kind of on my own for saving and paying for university. And I'm really thankful for what they were able to contribute. But, I had other friends that were able to get their parents to pay fully for their university. And I remember just feeling really negative of like all this money and all this debt I was accumulating in my early 20s and just feeling like I'm never going to be debt free and I'm never going to have this life that I want, or, I'm never going to be able to go buy this when my other friend, they can just have their money and save and work for after university, and I had to work multiple jobs throughout university. So I definitely had this negative side of it where I wouldn't want to have it almost, but I also wanted it. Like it was a very like complex relationship of me being like, I don't want this money because it's just going to go towards my student debt and it doesn't really matter. Like it's not really my money.
Yeah. And I think, trying to overanalyze or trying to analyze what all was going on.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? But the bottom line sounds like, we often have this in life. We just know we feel terrible.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can't explain exactly why, but that triggers bad feelings.
Yeah. It doesn't make you feel good. And I'd say recently, so my boyfriend, he's very, very fine. I'd say he's very similar to you. We're like very common sense when it comes to finances, and his parents both work in finance and in that industry. So he kind of grew up knowing you have to save, you have to do this, you have to do this. That being said, his parents were able to help him a lot throughout university as well when it came to finances. So he had the ability to save, but also he kind of taught me just a different way to look at finances and that it can be a positive relationship. And I slowly was working on paying off my debt and just slowly getting it down, and I was able to pay it off. And that was really exciting. And now I have, some funds. I wouldn't say I have a lot of money, but like I have some funds, and it's just nice to understand my finances. And I took that step to go to the bank before I was debt free and kind of start a plan with them and be like, okay, how can I have a more positive relationship with my finances? And once I start seeing that money go down, that debt start disappearing, I was able to like understand like, okay, a little bit goes here, a little bit goes here. And now I can save a little bit and I can do this or, get myself a little treat. Right.
I can't help but wonder because I've heard stories before where people have negative relationships with different things.
Yeah.
And so it makes me curious to ask. So in other people's cases, sometimes when they have that feeling, they don't want to think about it. Mm-hmm. And so they don't think about it. Yeah. And then they end up, for example, hey, I can go out tonight and do this. I can go spend money on that.
Yeah.
And because I'm not thinking about it, then I do. And it's just making it worse because now you're spending the money that you can't afford to spend.
Yeah.
Because you're not thinking about it. Did those things ever kind of happen to you?
All the time.
Oh, okay.
All the time. I would always just like just not think about my finances. I'd be like, you know what? Like, I'm way happier when I don't think about this. And I remember serving. So I was working at the Duke of Wellington in my last year of university. And, you know, like with serving, you make a lot of money in tips and it's cash. So I remember just thinking like, oh, this cash, like that doesn't really count as money. So I would like go and spend that money on myself, whether it's shopping or going out that night or doing anything. And like, I would literally just be like, this cash like doesn't count because it's not my bank account. Even though if I put it in my bank account, I probably could have helped out with my finances a lot faster. But yeah, like I didn't want to think about money. Finances.
It's funny because it's kind of the opposite. So by coincidence, Sheila and I met our first date was at Duke of Wellington.
Right, yeah.
Years ago. But
yeah.
When we were first married, we lived in Montreal. Mm-hmm. And Montreal has a really happening street called Crescent Street, really busy. And Sheila got a job waitressing, and I eventually got a job bartending there. And but waitressing was really where the money was at.
Yeah.
And she came home, and you have to remember, we'd be students, you know, not really having much. And we'd worked in restaurants, but not making those kind of tips.
Yeah.
She'd come home and she'd like put the money on the table, and you'd be like, what? We're like, I can't. And we just, because we didn't know what to do, that we just put in the bank.
Right.
You just kept putting in the bank. And so, but
yeah.
It didn't feel real in a different way.
Yeah.
It felt like there was this kind of fake money coming in, and somehow it grew into something real. So it's interesting how different people take a different spin on the kind of it's not real situation.
Yeah. And it's funny how paper money is the money that doesn't feel real. But
right.
the money that's in your bank account, that's actually not printed, and it's just in your, like, that feels more real than the paper money that you get in your pocket. Like when I see a $5 bill, I'm like, oh,
it's the opposite.
Yeah, it is. It's the complete opposite. Yeah. So that's really interesting.
And so do you always now feel comfortable with money, or are you still sometimes, is it still irksome, or, you know?
Yeah, I'd say I've gotten a lot better of just understanding my finances and being like, okay, like, this is my money. I understand it. And I really try not to have a negative relationship. There are some times where, you know, those little triggers might come up. And like you were talking about, like relationship wise, me and David, like we make it a thing to talk openly about our finances. 'Cause, you know, it's just, we find it's healthy, and we both have a different perspective because we both grew up completely differently. And in university, I would have that like kind of negative comparison to others, but now it's almost like a positive comparison of like, what can each person that grew up differently in different situations bring to the table? And, you know, maybe I become more conscious of saving and everything, and maybe he can let go a little bit and go and be like, okay, I can go and buy those shoes that I really want after a couple months, you know? So just like a good balance. I think is the main thing. Yeah,
I think that's kind of a good place to end it. I can just say that, you know, we are forced to really look at our finances, and we are forced to do it together.
Yeah. Because
early on we just didn't have enough to make ends meet. So you had to get creative, and you always can be. It's really important. We say often to distinguish between wants and needs, and you'd be surprised how many, what you think are needs are more like wants.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's great. I'm looking forward and hoping that you guys have more good conversations and get that under control, because I just know from personal experience that once I get my finances under control, it alleviates a lot of stress and just makes a lot of things a lot better.
For sure.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the area of financial wellness. It's really tough right now for people trying to get their first house. The market's gone crazy, and you know, we hear talk about a generation who may not have a chance to buy a house, but where people do have a chance, understanding a little bit about mortgages and how they work is probably going to help you out. Most of us need to arrange mortgage financing at some point, and we're hoping tonight to demystify some of the process and the language for our listeners. I'm talking with Jill Melanson, who I met when we were both with a service club, volunteering our time to give back to the community. Welcome, Jill, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, John.
Jill is a licensed mortgage agent who works with Invis, a large and respected Canadian mortgage brokerage. Mortgage financing can be complex and confusing, but Jill has a way to cut through it so her clients make informed choices.
She's there after the mortgage closes, providing tips and strategies to help clients build long-term wealth. Jill attended Conestoga College in a general business program, and she spent most of her career with TD Canada Trust as a financial advisor. She also worked at RBC. She had a chance to see how Canada's two largest banks operate, and it was interesting to see the differences. She completed her Canadian Securities course, among other investment courses, throughout her tenure in banking. And Jill's been married for 10 years and has two beautiful kids. So Jill, I know you often deal with complex situations, but today I'd like to go back to basics, if that's okay. So if I told you that I know nothing about mortgages and how I qualify for a mortgage, and you only have a little bit of time to tell me about those things, where would you start?
Mortgages 101. And there is a lot to know about mortgages, different lenders, fixed versus variable, insured versus uninsured. But where I like to start is with the 5 C's of credit. This is what the lenders are looking for when you apply for a mortgage and what you need to have in place in order to apply.
Maybe we could start by just saying what the 5 C's are and then we go through each of them.
Perfect. The 5 C's of credit are capacity, capital, collateral, credit, and character.
Okay, so that's a mouthful. Let's start with the first, I guess, capacity. What's capacity about?
So capacity is the most critical and is your ability to repay the mortgage. We call this debt servicing. It's a ratio. We're looking to that your monthly obligation doesn't exceed 44% of your total gross income.
Okay, so if I can just interrupt you for a second, just so when you say total gross income, what does that mean? Is that my paycheck? Is that how much I earn before taxes?
So it is your before tax income. So your annual salary of $100,000 is what we use for before taxes are taken off. Yes.
When you're talking about those percentages, does it break down into a monthly basis? So you figure out what your gross income is per month, and then the monthly mortgage payment can't be more than that percentage above it?
Exactly. Yep. So your total monthly obligations can exceed the 44. So we would take your annual income, divide it out by 12, and then include that in the ratio.
So when you say total, you're talking about things like car loans and other stuff too?
Exactly. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So you're including any sort of debt repayment, which is a car loan, student loans. And then on top of that, they're going to include your mortgage payment, your property taxes, condo fees, if applicable, and then heat.
Okay. I think I jumped in, but did we end up covering what you wanted to talk about in terms of capacity?
Yes, we did. That's perfect.
Okay. So what's the next C?
So the next C is capital, which is your down payment on the property. It's essentially the amount you're willing to invest in this new purchase. It portrays to the lender confidence and trust in how much you're willing to put in.
I think for a lot of first-time home buyers, the question is, at what point do they have enough? So when can they come knocking on the door and say, I'm ready to buy a house?
So the minimum required down payment is 5% of the purchase price. And that needs to come from your own personal resources. So it can't come from borrowed money. It can, however, come as a gift from an immediate family member, so a parent or sibling. But 5% is what gets you in the door. The lenders are looking for 90 days worth of statements. So they want to see 90 days of where that money is coming from.
What does that mean? 90 days of where it came from?
So they want proof of where the down payment comes from. So is it just your monthly contribution to your savings account? Did you receive an inheritance?
I see.
Where did the money come from?
Because the mischief they're looking for is somehow money mysteriously appears. Is that the situation?
Yeah. Or did it come, did somebody lend you the money?
Right.
And you then owe them the money back, because that would impact your ability to repay the loan if you then owe somebody else money at that point.
Yeah. And I think from experience, if a parent gives money to a child, they'll have to fill out some kind of form and attest to the fact that they did that.
Exactly. Yep. It's a gift letter is what's required to be signed.
So are we done with capital?
We are.
So what would be the next C?
The next C is collateral, which is the property itself that you're buying. So things to keep in mind is that you are being approved for a mortgage. They're also going to assess the property and approve the property. When I say assess, that's usually done in the form of an appraisal. An appraisal means that a third party is going to go out and view the property and make sure it's in good standing and the value holds up to what the purchase price is.
Well, that's interesting. So I guess that's good in a way, because if someone's gone out and looked at it, it might give you a bit of comfort that it's worth the value.
Exactly. Yes. It's not a bad, people often think it's a bad thing, but it's really truly a good thing to know that the value that you're paying for these properties is there.
Is that the basics for collateral?
Yeah. So it's the property itself. There are other things the lenders will look at. They'll look at the location. So there's going to be more stipulations on a property that's on a well or in a more rural location. And then there's properties that don't even exist, which would be a construction mortgage. And that's, again, a topic for a different time, right. But something that does exist as well, for sure.
What do you mean when you say more stipulations?
Sometimes a property that hasn't been as updated may still have some knob and tube in it. I had a client once that had a property that didn't have a basement. So things like that, they're always looking at the risk factors associated with a property. So a property without a basement, does it have the same resale value as a property with a basement?
Yeah, when you say stipulations, I guess that means something that's not great. It's exactly. It's taking the value down.
Yes, exactly.
All right, that makes sense. And what's the next C?
The next C is credit. So I assume most of our listeners know what credit is. We have two different credit bureaus in Canada, Equifax and TransUnion. Each lender will use one of the two when assessing your credit history. They go back 6 years, and they're going to look at the habits of meeting your credit obligations. Have you paid your bills? Most lenders will require you to have a minimum of two trades. Two trades meaning you have a credit card and a line of credit, or a line of credit and a loan payment, so that there is a credit history there for them to reflect back on.
Yeah, and if there was kind of simple or basic tips you could give people to keep their credit looking good, what would some of the kind of the key tips be?
First main tip is to make sure you make your minimum payment. So you don't always have to pay off your full balance. You need to make the minimum payment. So for an example, in the banks, when you're starting off, they're going to give you a credit limit of $1,000 or $2,000. Your minimum payment is $10 a month. So make sure you make that minimum payment. And then another big one would be don't max out your credit cards, your line of credits, things like that. If you're able to keep the balance under 80% of the credit limit, that really has a good overall impact on your credit score.
Okay, those are good tips. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like when I think back to when I was younger, I mean, you think the minimum payment is so small. What difference does it make if you pay it? But I guess it does make a difference.
I think that's what's happened to a lot of people that were young, and somebody handed them a credit card without giving them any sort of background on the little parts of it. So
yeah, so it's not a big deal that you don't pay it back then, but then you're trying to get a house a year later and it kind of sneaks back up on you again.
Yeah, and it can actually take several years to get out of that kind of situation. So
oh, yikes. Okay, so then we move on. I think the last C was character.
It is.
What's that about?
So character is all about you. It's your reputation and reliability, the impression you're going to make to the lender. This is where my job is most important. I'm essentially telling a story to the lender on why you should be approved for this mortgage. I'm going to share with them your educational background, your business experience, length of time in your current employment, length of time you lived in your current residence. They want to make sure you're not flip-flopping around or otherwise. I get to brag about your tenure with your employer. They'll also look, you've moved from one employer to the next, but you're in the same field of work. All of those things we would mention in this part.
So there's a lot of things that you can frame in a good way, and it's important to try and do that.
Exactly. Yep. It's truly my opportunity to make you shine.
So in the end, we've talked about these 5, but going back to the start, I think you said capacity is the most important one.
It is. It's where the government has stepped in, and they really want to ensure that you're not only set up now, but they want to make sure that in 5 years from now, when your mortgage comes up for renewal, that you still have the ability to pay your mortgage. So they're really trying to set you up for success. And people have a lot of other obligations, cell phone bills and childcare, those kind of things. So those there's lots of other expenses out there. So they're going to stick to their guns on that ratio.
We need to get the ratio right, but ultimately, I guess what the message is think about all five, and to the extent that you can set yourself up well in all 5 areas, you're going to improve your chances of being qualified for mortgage.
100%, yes.
So now I'm going to turn to my surprise last question for you. I ask every guest the same question at the end of an interview. Our show is about having different areas of wellness in life. In this, we're talking about financial today, but there's others. There's mental health, there's spiritual, there's intellectual, artistic, and more. And so my question is, and it's very hard for all of us to find balance between all these different areas when we're pressed for time. So what I like to ask people is, can you think of an area right now that's faltering a little bit in terms of wellness for you? And if you can think of one, can you think of one activity you could do to try and foster wellness in that area?
I would say my consistency with exercise. I am all over the place. I would like to get to a more routine schedule. But with COVID and the kids being home and things like that, I can make up a million excuses in my head. What I need to do is stop making excuses, and I work better when I have a routine, and I need to get back to a routine because I know how good I feel when I set my sights on something and follow through on it. So I always feel good after I work out, but if I do it on a more regular schedule, I think that would greatly improve me doing it more often and feeling better.
One of the main thrusts of our show is we're trying to remind people, like we call ourselves the check-in team. We're just trying to get people to remember, hey, wellness and physical wellness is a big piece of that. So we're trying to remind people to get outside, go for a walk, get regular. But I really like that idea of being regular. I'm like that too. I'm kind of a to-do list person and a routine person, and it's not unusual for me to not want to go out for a run, for example, and find a way because it's my routine. It's like tonight, I went out before this interview. I got out there and I felt amazing when I did. So I'm going to cross my fingers and knock on wood that you can get some routine back on the physical side.
Thank you. You know what? I'm going to do my best starting tomorrow. I find it funny. People often want to start on a Monday, right? They circle back to, I'll start Monday, but what I've learned in life, tomorrow always works.
Well, I hope you get to it. And Jill, thanks very much for explaining some of these concepts to us. I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, John.
I'm Cameron, and this is The Starving Artist. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a member of Canadian rock band Shy Harry, where I play keys and sing. And this is a story from my early days in the band, involving the creation of our EP entitled Another Year. When musicians get together to write, there are all different strategies and processes and all that stuff. But with Shy Harry, it typically goes something like this. Somebody will bring in a chunk of music, either a riff or a chord progression, maybe a melody concept, something like that. And then as a team, we loop through it, throwing all kinds of musical ideas at it until something sticks that we all really like. And that's what we go with. So to make the most of this process, we decided to do a writing retreat up at Ryan's cottage. Ryan's our drummer. Before I joined the band, the guys had done a couple of these in the past, and they came out with some great material. So I was excited to see what we would come up with. Our goal was to create an EP's worth of songs, so anywhere between like 3 and 5 tunes. So we loaded the cars with all of our instruments and some recording equipment. We hit the grocery store, the beer store, and the LCBO, important stuff, and made our way over to the cottage. And when we got there, we set up all the gear in the living room, And basically, for the next few days, everything we played, we recorded. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And the laughs. A lot of that stuff turned into what you can hear now on the EP. Some of it didn't make the cut, and some of it should probably never see the light of day. But the one I want to tell you about is the actual title track of the EP, Another Year. It must have been the second night of this retreat. Things were going well, and we were stumbled into this groove with lots of energy, really driving force behind it. It felt really good. And we started throwing some lyrical concepts around. And Eric came up with this idea, Eric's our frontman, about trying to sort of tip the hat to other musicians and songs that we admire and that influence us. So if you listen closely to the lyrics of the song Another Year, the first two verses especially, almost every line is a tip of the hat to somebody else. It's a reference to either a band or a song or a lyric that we like. And I think it's a pretty cool concept, little Easter eggs all through it. But what I wanted to tell you about was how that song came to be. So, like I said, we're in, I think, night 2 of the retreat. We're all feeling good. The music is coming together really well. Lots of big energy in the room. And to record some of these lyrical ideas, we needed to write them down. And for some reason, we had no paper. I don't know what happened, if we ran out or it was in the other room or what. But all we had lying around was a Sharpie and a pizza box. So we made do with what we had and started writing this stuff down on the pizza box. And it was so, it was a laugh at the time. But what was funny about it is we didn't bother transferring it to a notebook or anything later. When we left that weekend, we actually brought the pizza box with us in the car. And that was our reference. For a long time, actually, the working title of the tune was Pizza Box. And to this day, when we go to play it at a performance, my brain still says Pizza Box. I think it's just going to stick with me. I don't know if we still have the pizza box, though. Wouldn't that be something? Anyway, that's the story behind the song Another Year. If you haven't heard it yet, you can check it out wherever you stream music. See if you can hear some of those lyrical references I was talking about. That's all for me today. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
If you like what we're doing and enjoy the show, please spread the word about us. Connect with us on social media. We post regularly on our Instagram account, including show previews and takeaways after a show is aired. Feel free to comment and send us your thoughts. Follow our Instagram account. It's at lets.be.well.together. We do have a Facebook and Twitter page, but Instagram is our primary social media site. Please also subscribe to us and rate us on your favorite podcast platform.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
We're here today with Sammy and John.
How is everybody today?
And on Move Your Body, I want to talk about the way you can enjoy things on different levels. And here's what I mean. And then I'll ask you if you have a similar experience. So because I came into running so late, I didn't really know what to do. And turned out I was doing a lot of the body movements incorrectly, which was making me tired or making my knee sore, my foot sore. So I read a lot and did a lot and figured out how to run. And I think for a time I probably, which is typical of me, became overly bookish about it.
Right.
I was overthinking everything. But I'm still glad I did. It worked out really well in the end. But what I realized later was that my favorite times running, so after I finally figured out what works for me, the body movements that work for me and how I feel when I'm running, my favorite times when I enjoy doing that. Like I still enjoy the feeling of, really it's a feeling of living my life if I'm running regularly.
Right.
I just feel better all the time.
Yeah.
I also feel pretty good when I'm running, but the best I feel when I'm running is when I'm not thinking about any of that stuff. And so the other cool thing about working out is once you get better, once you get stronger, once you get better technique, you can enjoy it in a completely different way. So in my case, I rarely, if ever, get what they call a runner's high.
Right.
But I often feel amazing if I'm just out, not thinking about technique, maybe listening to music, ticking along and feeling great.
Yeah. It's almost like you feel like a sense of peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And even, sometimes it's like meditating, but I'm talking now about I'm not even meditating.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just in the moment.
Yeah. I would say like for me, there's a lot of different, exercises, different classes I've done. And yeah, like once you start getting better at it, you get more excited about doing it. And obviously being a dancer from the age of 3 to still dancing, so the age of 26, that is definitely something that like I can just go into a studio, turn off the lights, turn on some music and just move my body, get lost in the moment, get lost in the words. And it is like, it's like your happy place.
Can you dance to the point where, say, you just put on music and you don't even have choreography in mind? You just start moving?
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's definitely something I love to do, like improv. And that's probably something I started doing more in high school because at Eastwood, like the dance director, she was very much like that, just about moving your body. Like we'd all be on the floor and then she would just call out different shapes or different things to be. She's like, now you're a door. So then you had to kind of move like a door. Now you're a small door. Now you're trying to get through the door.
I don't know how to be a door.
Yeah. So it's really like that helped me though expand my learning and knowledge of dance to become to that point of where I can just now go in and feel what my body's saying and feel what the music is saying.
Yeah, you can express yourself in a completely different way, but it takes a whole bunch of work and time to do it. But once you get there, it's like nothing else.
Yeah, and it's like comfort.
Right.
Where it's almost like it's your spot now. Where you're like, I feel so comfortable and like confident in doing this that I can now just do it freely.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned I've only got a runner's eye twice. I can remember both of them, and I do know that both times in the minutes, in like 10 minutes or more leading up to it, I was initially just feeling this just flow.
Right. Yeah.
And then I don't know what happened, and I wish I did because I wish I could bottle it or regenerate it.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
And then I felt it.
Yeah, I've never been a runner, but I've always heard about the runner's high, so I would love to experience that just to like know what it is and just like feel that.
The funny thing is, I mentioned this too in my book, is that I didn't believe it existed.
Right. Okay.
So I thought it was kind of like people talk about hypnotism, and I'm very skeptical about whether I could be hypnized, which probably means I can't because I'm probably going to fight it.
Yeah, fair.
I also didn't actually believe there was a runner's high.
Interesting. Then you experienced it.
Now I do.
Yeah. It's awesome.
There's a thought. Popped up while running.
I was thinking about a quote that I saw from Ryan Hall on Instagram last year sometime. Ryan Hall is a U.S. marathon runner who's quite successful, and he also trains a lot of people more recently in marathon, including his wife, who's super successful U.S. marathon runner, Sarah Hall. He said something, it combined both things I like, running and art, and he said something to the effect that training for a marathon is like creating a painting with all different types of brush strokes and elements, and I'm not going to say it correctly, so I won't get focused on that. It reminded me of something somebody said about the podcast, which was, well, where's the answer? Where's the ultimate answer? Do you explain how it all fits together? And no, because I don't think I can. Our thinking in terms of the podcast is that over the course of time, there'll be a whole bunch of brush strokes that are slowly putting together a painting, and we'll see how it turns out in the end. But if we hear from people who talk about all these different areas of wellness, somebody talks about spiritual wellness on one show and financial wellness on another show, or mental health on another show, or how to exercise your mind for intellectual wellness on another show, that slowly over the course of time, as we see the paintbrushes working more and more, we'll get a better sense of things like balance and wellness. And that's the overall objective. So I wish I could just say, I figured it out. Here's the answer. But in the meantime, I'm on my own journey, and I'm talking to a lot of people, and I'm inviting you to ride along. And with any luck, not only can you learn lessons from these other people too, but you can be part of the discussion, and you can help us all better understand things.
It's me. Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin. Okay, so today we're going to talk about financial wellness and how good people should try and make money.
Right, which seems kind of counterintuitive when you hear a lot of
Definitely.
people talk about being good, being well.
Yeah.
Money seems to be something you shouldn't get. So,
You shouldn't think about, you shouldn't try and achieve. Yeah.
and where is this coming from? Well, I was in Rotary at a time, and Sheila and I went to a Rotary convention in Korea in 2016, and there was a spiritualist who was one of the key speakers, and his name was Mahatria Ra. And if you want to watch the same presentation that we saw, I'm going to put the link in our show notes. And the larger context was he talked about how people could be a gift to the world. He wanted everyone to make a pledge. What we want to talk about is just one little aspect of that. But still, I'll say what the pledge is, and then we'll talk about that one little aspect. So here's the pledge. Day by day, in every way, I will be a gift to the world by becoming most and more healthy, wealthy, loving, blissful, and spiritual. So you can imagine it's similar to our theme about holistic wellness.
Exactly.
But he said something about wealth that both Sheila and I just looked at each other. And what he said was abundance. Abundance actually solves problems in the world, and scarcity creates problems in the world.
Right.
Financial abundance in the hands of good people will build a better world. Financial abundance in the hands of bad people will destroy the world. And his premise must have been a zero-sum game, because he said, there's only one way to save the world from bad people. All bad people should become poor. And the only way to do that is all good people should become rich.
Yes. So there you go. If you're a good person, you got to go for the gold.
Exactly. So you don't often hear people talking about accumulating wealth, making money to be a good person, especially not in the context of a morally good person.
No, I never thought of it that way. And that's why I was surprised when we were listening to the lecture. Because for me, I kind of related more to the Eastern philosophy and the religions that wealth is a material thing that you shouldn't be attached to.
That's a distraction.
A distraction, yeah. So I found this quite interesting in that if you're a good person and you collect wealth, then you're going to do good with it to help, to give.
This concept, though, of keeping it out of the hands of the bad people, a bit of a flyer, because the bad people, they'll cheat, they'll steal, they'll find a way to get the money.
Exactly.
Everyone else plays by the rules, they don't.
Right.
So, we can't stop that. That's not the reason why you're trying to accumulate wealth. But the point is, earlier and some of our other guests have talked about the importance of financial wellness to an overall approach.
For yourself, though.
For yourself.
For your own wellness.
And this little nugget helps us see, you know what? It can also help the larger community, larger world.
Exactly.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
And that's the end of our podcast. And here is our sign off, telling you what we're up to this week. Well, for me, Sheila, I have had a busy family week. So we had a wedding, I had my birthday, and we were doing a lot of things. So I'm not feeling that great. So I need to get back to eating healthy and eating regular, working out, and just feeling better this week. That's my goal. And what about you, Sammy?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, but happy birthday, Sheila.
Thanks.
Hope you had fun.
Yes, I had a great time, and what a great wedding.
It was so much fun.
Yeah.
I found a lot of people kept telling me that there was so much energy in the room.
Oh, it was
and
wonderful.
I felt just seeing everybody and just feeling like kind of like a normal wedding.
Yes.
Was such an amazing feeling after 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm the same, where it was a very busy week and weekend, and I was exhausted by 11:30, which typically at weddings I can go until 2 a.m.
Yeah. Well, what time did you start?
I had to get my makeup done at 8:30 a.m.
Yeah.
So I was starting pretty early. So this week I'm kind of just taking a step back,
Yes.
working on rest, maybe some yoga, and then I'm going to Blue Mountain next week. So,
Nice.
Yeah, it'll be lots of fun.
Oh, great.
How about you, John? What do you got going on?
On the health side, a few weeks ago, I started eating better and doing my core exercises, and it's finally starting last week to pay its dividends. I'm starting to feel that kind of muscle movement feeling, the energy, so that's great. I also got back to Park Run after missing it for a couple months. Now it was shut down because of COVID, and it was a bit cold, a bit windy, but felt great. I really love the feeling once you're, especially in winter, you're running, it's hard, doesn't feel like you're breathing right. And then all of a sudden it just feels like the oxygen is just coming straight into your body, and it feels really cool. And so it's been great on the physical side. On the social side too, I had an amazing time at the wedding. We danced so much. It just was so different to see all these people again. It felt great.
Yeah, definitely.
And also to see, I had a really good view during the wedding ceremony of Rachel's expression. And when she was doing her vows, it was just really something magical to behold. So that was great. But on the mental health side, unfortunately, I'm struggling because of what's going on in the Ukraine. I have read a lot about war history over time. And so, what's going on over there is really scaring me. We're not a news or current event show, but sometimes those things affect the frame of mind. And so, for example, today I woke up at 3:30 in the morning and my mind just started spinning and I couldn't go back to sleep. So, I was thinking about it, and then I tried to avoid watching any news, which I did. And so, but I did go back to kind of some quotes that I look at. I'm just going to read a couple. And it kind of shows why I'm feeling how I'm feeling. So first of all, by J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings, he said, "The world is full enough of hurts and missed chances without wars to multiply them." And there's a famous war veteran from the States called Audie Murphy, and he's a war hero. So he comes back being celebrated. And what he said was, no soldier ever really survives a war, which is also true.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm a world away. I'm in a safe place. I can't really imagine what people are going through, but my thoughts are with the people of the Ukraine, whose country has been invaded. So I'm sorry if it's a bit of a downer to end like this, and maybe I can end on a bit of a note to think about, which is a quote from a Vietnamese Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, who said, "If we want peace, we have to be peace. Peace is a practice, not a hope." So let's hope at some point very soon cooler heads prevail. But in the meantime, I think me and others are going to struggle with it.
Yep. And I'm going to send out peace.
Me too.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.